Good evening, folks. Welcome. This is FMA discussion, episode 152. And tonight we have, which I am so glad to have, always enjoy talking to him. We have Elrik Jundis. Thank you for coming on. How are you?
It's an interesting time, this whole COVID thing. It's honestly, I would tell people it's like I'm surviving and I'm having some good times in between, but it's a crazy time. It's been a very disruptive year plus now for the stuff that I do.
Who would ever guess like this? We would still be, even though it seems we're coming out pending the country you live in, but that we would still be in this calendar year and plus. You know what I mean?
And it's just different parts of the world. Like I have a colleague that I work with who's in Hong Kong, and they said, they've been back to almost normal, like just from middle of last year already. But it's because they had the experience of prior coronaviruses and knowing how to deal with it and get society in order. And I mean, like crazy things like $600 USD fines for not wearing masks. So it's like, people comply, and when you have the infrastructure, it's all good. But I live in the Philippines where infrastructure is differently implemented. There's always an exception to the rule. So society correlates to Philippine martial arts.
That's very unique. Differently implemented. That is. But you're not. Are you? So wait. Are you right in Manila or outskirts?
Yeah. So there's Manila City proper. Well, I don't know the East Coast, but for the United States, like I'm from San Francisco Bay Area, and you could fit all of Metro Manila. When people read about all the revolutionary period, you could fit all of that just in the city of Oakland. Metro Manila is not big. So it's like during Easter Holy Week, when everyone used to leave, you could travel from one side of Manila to the other side in under half hour. But during rush hour traffic, that could take 3 hours. So it feels like it's way bigger. Yeah. And the density of population, we're fitting, the entire population of greater Los Angeles into like, one of those cities like Pasadena or something. So it's like, it's a crazy different thing.
No, Brandon was telling me like to get what could be virtually walking distance, not that, a couple miles by car though could take, pending traffic, just crazy.
He lives, from what I know of, like I think he's down in Parañaque or BF Homes, and it's like that area, their traffic is like, if someone visits you from Parañaque, they really want to visit you because it's like commuting is actually an endeavor.
That would drive me nuts, knowing that, like in normal circumstances, something's 15 minutes away, but it's taking you an hour because of traffic. Oh my God. Yeah, that would be tough. And yes, folks, if you're watching, tell us where you're watching. Say hello. We got Richard Pac-Man, Chad Bailey, bye. That's not correctly, and Mark Stewart. All right, if you're tuning in, tell us where you're watching from. Hit the like button, and we're going to get started. So, folks that are, this is the second time we've had Elrik on. The first time, if you guys want to see it, episode 66, part 1 and part 2. When we had him on before, was more of a cultural, historical perspective we were talking about. We really didn't get into his journey, his training in San Francisco, and now that he's back in the Philippines, of course, his training there. And that's what we're going to kind of cover tonight, and plus what he's doing as far as film projects and all that. So I'm excited. So all right, let's get started. So where and who was your first FMA experience? Was it actually in America or PH?
Yeah, so I'm San Francisco born and raised. I'm a 4th generation U.S. citizen. And then my parents on both sides, my mom and dad immigrated to the United States in the 1950s. So they're post-World War II. And there's a little bit of cultural context people need to understand. The Manong Generation are those who came over prior to World War II. They were not U.S. citizens, but they were, they were citizens of the colony that the United States owned. So it's This could be brought over for work, came over. But after World War II, it's only 50 a year, except for right after World War II, where U.S. citizens who are already there in the Philippines or those who served and were taking advantage of their service, got their citizenship. So that was my grandfather. He was a Philippine scout. He was he got the Silver Star, Bataan Death March survivor.
Oh, wow.
And this kind of touches into the context. Like, he didn't even share and open up anything he knew to me till I had been studying for 3 years, and it was only because I was going to the Philippines.
Wow.
And it was like only after that trip to the Philippines that I found out during his last trip to the Philippines, he had done advanced training with Undo Cabranay and Lapunti. And there's like a whole family connection with that. So FMA was kind of in the background. I grew up in a house where there were antique weapons. My dad was deep into comics, and that's a whole nother story, which I think there was a request to touch on. But my dad was like the one who really opened the doors, and he was a student activist in the 70s, actually 60s, 70s. And he had helped like coordinate community gatherings back then that were for like college students, Filipino American community. So there was always at different times a connection between the San Francisco Filipino community and then also the resources in Stockton. So that generation knew about Filipino martial arts. That's why I read that poem about the bolo from my dad earlier. But when I got started in 90, it was like FMA had disappeared. I had been looking for it for 2 years before I started. And I'm kind of like I'm going to be jumping all over the place. So good luck to anyone who follows.
No, that's fine. When you say disappeared from the San Francisco area?
It disappeared because post 1960, was it 60? Yeah. I'm trying to remember the year. Is it 65 or 75? I think it was post 65. The United States changed their immigration laws, and then it went from 50 Filipinos a year to 20,000. That's why you have over 1 million Filipinos in the United States. So every year since 1965, 20,000 of them have been immigrating. The earlier generations were all professionals. I think we talked a little bit about that. But there's a real dichotomy of the culture that was there before for Filipino Americans and then afterwards. Like, I knew, I had family friends that were Manongs, like a guy who was born in the 1910s. And then, no, actually, I think he came earlier than that, but he came in the 1920s. And like his wife's experience, who was her father was an American GI who fought in the Philippine-American War. And then, her mom was a Filipina. And stories about like, when the white family would come over, they would hide all the darkies upstairs because it was an embarrassment. And it's like interesting cultural context and what it was like to grow up during that time period. And like the rarity of like Filipinas were, I'm going to tell this quick story real quick about this one woman, and she's like in her 70s now. I've known her from the Filipino American National Historical Society, which I used to volunteer for a decade. She was a teenager, and she remembered she was in one town and was walking, and she remembered that all of a sudden there's like this Filipino male like following her, and this went on for several blocks. And she was getting scared, and then she went in front of a storefront and just waited there because she knew that if anything happened to her, the people in the store would come protect her. But he came up, and what he basically told her was, "I'm sorry, I know this might be scary, but I have a Filipino wife, and she hasn't seen another Filipina in years."
Oh.
And this guy was like almost in tears, and she was like shocked. And long story short is they actually got to meet, they got together, they built a relationship that lasted for years. But in some of those communities, I mean, the ratio was in the 30s to even 50 males to one Filipina. So that's why there's the Manong generation, and then you have people like Dan Anasanto, Mike and I, Rene Latosa. That's the bridge generation. They're the children of the Manongs. And then a good number of them are going to be like Mike and I and others who are Filipino and something else, because there's so few Filipinas, they had to marry, Black, Chinese, Japanese, Irish, whatever.
Just due to the lack of, I gotcha. Okay.
And then there's interesting, because of the miscegenation laws, it was illegal in certain parts of the United States. So it was literally growing up from my time period and the experience of my parents, who, even though are post World War II, they're after the Manong Generation, which is a very tiny group. There was still this huge, tight-knit thing. So if you're someone from that generation, or you're connected to that generation, you just start asking questions. You realize you're going to know multiple people. You're going to be connected on so many different levels. And it was very much family by declaration. Like, there's cousins I didn't find out until I was like in my 30s. Like, what? They're not my biological cousins?
Oh, yeah.
Like, no. They're, Lola, what's her name? She and your Lola, your actual Lola, are just from the same town. But that was enough in that environment to say, hey, we're going to be family. And those relationships lasted, decades later.
It just amazes me. I had absolutely no idea post World War II they were only letting 50. Do you know why?
I mean, I'd have to go back in my memory banks.
I'm just
Part
curious.
of my background is ethnic studies. I was very involved with that. I helped get the Philippine Studies Department founded at San Francisco City College when I was a student activist. We got the first Filipino American elected to the San Francisco Community College Board. So I was ingrained in that. But there's there's always anti-immigration legislation at different points, and that's part of that reason. And then there was, the focus is like, hey, let's make America better for Americans. So you got to see, well, at least for me, it's important to see the both sides of it. Like, as a Filipino American, I understand the hardships there. And, folks like Darren Tabone and others can really talk about what that generation went with, specifically in Filipino American communities, and for those, who passed on the legacy that became FMA in the United States.
How interesting. And we got some more folks watching yet. Oh, Jesse, the Jedi Knight Elrik. And we got Kane from Florida, Lori from Texas. Hey, Lori. And Richard Pac-Man. Always good to see Richard. And Felix. All right. Richard had a question. Part of the United States Air Force, FE? I'm hoping.
No, it's U.S. It's actually the United States Filipino Martial Arts Association, so the U.S. FMAF, and that was the birth of that was Darren Tabone. So Darren Tabone was one of my mentors, one of my core instructors when it came to two things: deeper training within Eskrima Serrata, but specifically sparring and specifically sports. You can't talk. I mean, for me, you're missing part of the rich story without talking about the politics and the animosity and whatever. But what I can say is Darren felt a need after Grandmaster Cabales passed away to represent the efficacy of Serrata and also the knowledge that was passed on to that last generation. And I've seen this in different methods, at the end of their life, they decide to finally open up and teach stuff. Like, they covet their stuff, and they might have even had public systems for decades, but there's certain information that only comes out in the last part of their life. Okay. Now, here's a clear example that you can relate to or you'll go like, wow, from being a Kali Ilustrismo practitioner. Angel Cabales died at the age of 73.
Yeah.
Tatang Ilustrismo didn't start teaching until he was like 70.
Until Tony Diego dragged him out of the house at 72?
We all owe huge debt to Tony Diego because that could have died. All that knowledge, and there's a lot of knowledge there.
Think about it. If it wasn't for his persistency, would we ever seen it? Who knows?
Yeah. I'm gonna go on another tangent. Maybe not. So I could go so many places. I've been thinking about all these topics, and I realized they could each be hours. So
no. But this is interesting because sometimes I don't ask pre-questions because I'd like to find out for myself. So this is news that I knew you grew up in San Francisco, but I didn't know you were born there and your parents are. So what was your first FMA? Was it Cabales, your first experience?
I want to touch the community context. So it's like people were connected. There's people I called uncle for years. Like Oscar Peñaranda, he's beloved in the Bay Area. He taught at several different high schools, Tagalog. And so he was a Tagalog, then Filipino teacher when they changed it to the national language. But he was also like an unknown. He doesn't have any rank, but he was like inner core to certain people in the Villabray-Largusa system. And then, so, I was shown stuff by him. For some people in my generation don't know this Filipino-American stand-up comedian named Rex Navarrete. He was a student of Oscar Peñaranda. Anyway, Oscar was one who set it up so that I had 2 private interviews with Ben Largusa and was able to ask a whole bunch of connections. And then, if you look at Dan Inosanto's book, when he talks about the different instructors and he talks about Ben Largusa's core group, I think it was, maybe it's already the 80s. No, it's like 7 or so. So it's the 70s. My first exposure to FMA was attending one of Ben Largusa's San Francisco classes. But I was a kid, I was intimidated, and I didn't want to do it. And it's like, who knows, my life path could have been totally different if I did it then. But then like years later, Lamador is the last name. It was King and Tony Lamador. I can't remember their dad, but he was part of Largusa's core group. But anyway, Tony Lamador was my roommate for a while. And so it's like, wow. And it was like these interconnected things. He was also, old school San Francisco closed door Villabray-Largusa, but he was also a judoka, and he trained with the father of Mitch Palacio. Mitch Palacio was my judo coach, and Mitch Palacio, when he competed, he was like number 3 in the United States in the unlimited class.
No kidding.
At 180 pounds, 5'10", Filipino American, Hawaiian, Japanese, Filipino. He's that mix that happened, right? Okay. But at 180 pounds, he was number 3 in the United States in unlimited class. So he's fighting people
200 plus,
300 pounds and stuff. And he was number 3 in the U.S. And so it was like when you get into the Philippine American scene, you need to understand that people know each other on multiple levels and through different ways. There's some other history stuff. I was thinking about another family like I'm connected to. Another roommate of mine was Nico Lazada. He's a quite infamous character, and his brother's kind of famous because they were San Francisco, actually cops in multiple departments. But if you ever watched the movie Training Day with Denzel Washington, he'll talk about all of his training was to get that character was from when he did ride-arounds, and he spent time with this guy he calls Cool Cat. Cool Cat is Paul Lazada. You could look him up on the internet. They have their own family stuff. Coach Chikale I have a black belt in that. And hardcore street fighters. When you watch Training Day, when I watched, I'm like, oh shit, this is a Lazada family. That's just like,
I gotta watch that movie.
Really gangster mindset. And my family goes back with him to the 60s. But what people don't realize is like when this is deep Stockton knowledge, but when there was that huge break of Angel Cabales and Dan Inosanto and all those different groups separated, it was at this one particular meeting, and they all complain about the secretary that disrupted it. But I know both sides. I can appreciate like those guys who had been with Angel back then, and then also why this new group was trying to support them. The why I'm bringing up that secretary is that's the mother of Paul and Nico Lazada. And it's like, there's this whole connection there. So like Reynard Lazada, their dad, the founder of Coach Chikale Carr, is like, he's not a part of the official list, but he has a master's diploma, and you have this other lineage of Serrata. And so my point is there's a lot of hidden lineages, which at the end of the day, it's like, are they good? Some I'd say go practice with them. The old way, and the way I've gotten master ranks at different times, but I'm like, if I can't fight with it, I won't consider it. But I also don't like rank because I was around people who actually didn't believe in it. The only reason they got rank is because now martial arts became this commercial thing. In my immersion into FMA was very a personalized thing. I started as a commercial FMA student, but I could have actually started sooner. Like before I actually formally started studying, there in my circles were other uncles who were like educators or counselors at San Francisco City College, different places, who were all former Rene Latosa students.
Interesting.
You know, and so these were the people who were available to me in San Francisco. I was looking for different things. And then when I was I was a student at San Francisco City College. Guy came by who was from Stockton, a direct student of the last generation of folks. And that's when I started Serrata. And it was, what I have to jump back is prior to that, I'd done high school fencing. I had done Makdojo, Kuksuwan, which was very popular in like Inside Kung Fu, Black Belt magazine, high profile if you're into those things at those times. So I felt really cool, and I was on my way to by getting a black belt, and then put years into that. And then when I got to City College, I took their boxing program and their judo program. So judo program that was like it's 3 hours of physical training,
slapping out, being thrown.
Once you got the basic skills of learning how to fall, and then it became 20 minutes of warm up. Then the rest was technique applied, and then the majority of the class was sparring, and then boxing, which was just all conditioning. And having that experience versus my dojo, I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do commercial school anymore. And, years later, I can appreciate it because, I have a high respect for people who do that, who are able to use that format and produce amazing martial artists.
Right.
But it made me biased, like hardcore biased to a long time, that I didn't see the value in other systems. And then when I met this guy from Stockton, then it was like, I said, okay, try your boxing, try your judo. Okay, now try hitting me with a stick. And like him making all my shit not work. And I'm like, okay, shut up, take my money, and, let's train privately. And that was my, my immersion into it. I'm going to just share a screen real quick so I can just talk about background and everything.
I'll pop it up.
It says my screen is now, how do I do or view? Full screen? There we go. Can you see this?
Here, let me lower. You know what? I'm going to lower myself. That'll make it bigger.
Well, I have no idea what you guys are seeing. Oops. But here, I'm just sharing. These are people I actually trained with. So, I could talk about, I could say a lot about each one of these experiences and these folks. But, I was blessed to have been born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, where there was a lot of martial arts and a lot of, skilled, qualified people. And then because of my father, who paved the way for me in the Philippines, he had built the relationship so that I was able to train with and meet different folks. And then over the years, then I learned how to make friends and connect and meet with people.
Just as far as the list you put up there, just for folks who can't see it, who do you got on there?
So I mentioned first, so it's Kuksulwan. I was able to train with some high level folks of that, and also in the school with the Grandmaster in Yuksu. Early on after that, I left when I was prior to community college. I was actually studying Swai Jiao and Bagua. It was like this interesting guy. He was a Chinese immigrant to Brazil, and he was trying to make a life for himself in the United States. He couldn't speak English. He only spoke, I think, Mandarin, Cantonese, Portuguese, and some Spanish. So that was like fun training with him.
That was,
Wing Chun from different sources. And then I spent a long time with, Kabbalah Serrata. And we could go deep into that, but I don't know. My first trip to the Philippines, though, was 93. And when I went, I was very much it was a weird thing because I was raised to appreciate all Filipino culture. but I was very much ingrained to this mindset of like, my system's the best system. And I was just there to meet elders who knew, Felicimo Dison, which is why I sought out Antonio Illustrissimo, why I sought out Jose Mena, because they both had, reported connections to him.
Was that the whole
validated through different sources?
Was that the whole doc crew? You had Tatang, Mena, Felice, and Angel. Was that the whole kind of brat pack?
That's to say, there's because I've heard different stories from different folks, and I also specifically asked both Jose Mena and Antonio Illustrissimo about it, and it's like Dizon was looked at them as a peer. And then what also is like Dizon and Tatang, I was watching Peaky Blinders yesterday. I don't know if you've watched that show.
No.
Okay. So it's about early 1920s UK, number runners, gun runners, gangster criminal stuff. Well, that's what Dizon and Tatang were doing together back in that time period. 30s, 40s.
30s, 40s. No kidding. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that's how you moved up. But there, in terms of, and there's going to be I know other people have talked about, they're putting stuff out there, but it's what's known is they were both ran protection rackets for certain areas of Escolta. Escolta was the big money-making district in Manila back then, and it's diminished now, but that was their stomping ground. And then of course both lived in Tondo and did stuff in the docks. And then you got to remember Angel was just a kid. I forget what years. Tatang was a decade plus. Dizon and Tatang were a decade plus older. So it's like there's a huge age gap.
Different, right? Yeah.
Experience in life at that point in time.
But they all trained together, correct?
Say again?
They all trained together, correct? I mean, even though they had a racket maybe going on, but they did train together, correct?
They played together. So I'll put it this way: they didn't necessarily train in their systems, each other's systems, but they they played together, and they probably exchanged and said, "Oh, you do that technique, I have this technique like that." But I've never heard it directly said like that. When I was in '93 when I'm asking questions, and then '97 when I was asking those questions, there was still Tatang is, you didn't want to just ask anything. In fact, myself and others, is we had video cameras, but we were intimidated to ask to film. And it was part of also this culture in certain areas where it's you weren't supposed to film that stuff. So, it's very jealous to see oh, that wasn't a problem for, Topper, and that wasn't a problem for I can't remember his name right now from Australia.
Yeah.
Floro.
Oh, like David.
And I know of other people who have videos out there, but it's that's their stories and that's their videos. But there is more footage that exists of different old men. But I wish I had the wherewithal to have asked these questions. I do have a 2-hour video of Mena, but I'm still gonna it needs to be cleaned up. It's the sound audio quality is so bad,
but still, you got it though. I mean, you know what I mean? How many people have a 2-hour video of Jose? That's still impressive. But I can tell you something, man. Just seeing Brandon's, he's got milk crates, just what they converted to VHS to CDs. You cannot believe how much footage he freaking has. I mean, it is just freaking incredible. And man, if that ever goes public, man, that's going to be some freaking.
There's a lot of history and culture that needs to, as a Filipino American whose core impetus to teach and then also study FMA was getting in touch with my culture, and then wanting to validate a lot of the narratives about why things are done. So I went deep into it. And like Tatang was a very unique individual in that, like, depending on the stories, and I'm more inclined, like some people say, no, he's born 1904. There's certain aspects where I believe it's 1900. So think about it. And that's only 4 years, right?
Yeah. I mean,
but having done deep reading on that time period and what he, what was going on in the Philippines and what was going on in the areas where he was coming of age, he got the elders around him were people who fought during Spanish times.
Yeah.
And that was like the last, the last 25 years of Spanish occupation of the Philippines was also a radical change, because it went from like 4,000 Spaniards living in the entire Philippines to, at the very end, the guesstimate is 175,000. 4,000 to 175,000. And that 175,000 only happened after two things happened. The opening of the Suez Canal, so you didn't have to travel around Africa. You could go through, go through Egypt and the Gulf there, and steamships.
Okay.
Yeah. And the life expectancy in the Philippines was higher than Spain until 1888. So then you had all these poor Spanish immigrants flooding the Philippines, and also new initiatives. So it's like you had a huge change in Philippine society. And that's where we see a lot of changes. And then some of the stories now, it's like some of the stuff aren't true for the entirety, but it's like it could happen during those last 25 years. And then I think some of those stories are mixed up with actual experiences during the American colonial period, because that was a crazy time.
We got some more folks. Hey, we got Julius here, Maestro Alvin, Jeremy, hey, Patrick. All right, guys, don't forget to smash that like button. And if you got questions, let us know. So when you say the Spanish went there, I mean that's a significant number, 5,000 to six figures. Do you think they also just enjoyed, the culture? They enjoyed maybe the Filipino lifestyle, or the people?
Some of them did because they stayed.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like
during the American colonial period, there were more Spaniards who were born in Spain living in the Philippines than anything prior to 1875.
So something, there had to be many attractions.
But it's also, these were whole families that immigrated to the Philippines at that time.
So not just bunch of single guys.
No, it wasn't. And prior to that, it was mostly single men, though there were some nuns who went to the Philippines, and some, if you were wealthy, you might have brought some of the family members. But that's why we have the mestizo class, folks who married into the Spaniard Chinese mixes, and then Filipino Spanish mixes.
I'm just thinking, that's fascinating. Like, yeah, if you're a single man, because somebody told me this, and I'd like to get your opinion on it. A lot of when, during the Spanish, war and all that, when a lot of the Spanish soldiers, and again, I'm not saying this is true, I want to get your opinion, and they didn't go back because they kind of liked it there, so they kind of received their post-term salary, whatever you want to deem it, as far as the military service, but a lot of them stayed there. Is that, do you find,
some of them did, and I can't say that a lot of them, because I haven't seen anything to back up that data. And the fact that there's an actual census 1830, and I actually have a list of because there's certain things that I actually have, like spreadsheets of years and dates and historical data. And so it's like every time I find a population census or soldier numbers, I document it, I document the source, I document the years. So in 1830, there were only 4,050 Spaniards in the Philippines.
Okay.
That's the total number of Spaniards in the Philippines. And then like the mestizo, I think it's like they actually had the statistics for Filipino Spanish mestizos and then Chinese Spanish mestizos.
Okay.
Much larger. The Spanish Chinese mestizo numbers are much larger.
Oh no! Oh, I would have never guessed that. Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, like in the late 16th and early 17th century, there are multiple Chinese massacres where like the population went from like 30,000 Chinese to like within a 2-week period down to less than 800, less than 600.
Wow.
This happened like 4 or 5 times over that time period.
That's a genocide.
Yeah, it is, you know. And like people don't realize in the early day, I mean, we're going back to old stuff, but it's like, and you know, indigenous Filipinos were working with the Spaniards and killing them off. And then, you know, taking the spoils of war. In the early time period, people don't realize there was actually a Japanese community that was larger than the Spanish community. There was 3,000 Japanese immigrants living in the Philippines in the early 17th century. And then at the early part, and then it was still also a Muslim community that was strong. And, you know, we're still doing things. But, you know, as time went on, they were out or converted because it made, if you want to be someone, you needed to be part of Spanish society, and then that meant becoming Catholic, taking a Spanish name.
Right. Taking this. Yeah. Jeez. So so your first stop there is 94. And
93, but yeah.
93, but it sounds like, so when you went there, you kind of found out and you go back to San Francisco. Are you still continuing with Cambala's?
I was. And, you know, the reason I'm pausing, because it's like the stories to share. I was still very much, my style's the best, my instructor's the best. And I wrote like really offensive things. Enough that on 5 different occasions, people drove up. In one case, an entire van load of folks from Southern California came up to challenge. And I regret that nothing happened, but it's just like, it just shows the mentality back then. My instructor said, well, if anyone wants to fight, you're going to fight me first. And he pulled out a burro. And then nothing happened. And then we just hung out and talked, and then like, you know, grumbling of like nothing happened and stuff. But on other occasions, and I could say this now because I'm friends with these folks, I don't think they'd mind me sharing. It's like when I broke out with my first instructor, like I think they called it Black Tuesday for it. It was like several carloads of my former students and then the new students came over to my class at Berkeley. And, you know, I stopped one of my interactions when I started getting blood on me.
So you've had, wow. I think you had time a boatload.
There's like, yeah, there's some of that happened on 2 different occasions where some of Mike and I's students came to my classes to challenge me, and we talked. And then one of them actually mixed it up, and then I was able to show the stuff. And I'm like, you know, I have a lot of love and respect for those guys now. Like years later, I'm friends with them. I'm friends with their kids. But the bad blood was there at one point, and I was a real asshole. And like, I want to say certain pitfalls, like believing your system's the best, believing that who the lineage instructor is, you know, because I study Tata from Tatang, or I studied from Jose Men, or I studied from, you know, I'm not going to name certain styles because people get pissed, but some of them are out there like Bikini Tersha. It's like, unless your instructor is that good instructor, and at the end of the day, unless you're that badass, you should really, it really doesn't mean anything. Especially now, I've been doing this.
You're so right. What does it mean?
I've been doing this since night for over 30 years, off and on. And it's like, you're going to still meet people who are better than you.
100%. Yeah. That's what keeps you striving to be the best version of yourself, you know? Yeah.
I was, you know, my instructor was really selective, my first instructor. And after one of our demos in 1990, you know, some Cal students, you know, came up to him and were begging to learn, and they got my number, which changed it. And this went on for like about 6 months. And by then I had finished my basic 12. And then, you know, I asked, and my instructor gave me permission. It's like, you can teach the basic 12 to folks at Berkeley. So that's when I started teaching in 91. And when you start teaching, especially, you know, I only have 1 year's worth of experience. I don't have really at that point, other than being tested by my instructors and then like intense testing with my peers, I didn't have sparring experience because there was a generation of Stockton folks who didn't spar. And I understand it because for them, it was like, no, if we're going to go there, someone's going to get hurt, and it's fighting. And I know people got their hands broken, teeth lost, and I've heard this story in multiple systems. That's just part of the culture because it was still very survival, still very gangster.
Yeah, and today it's supplemental. It's for fun. You know what I mean? An activity. I mean, right? We're not, fighting the whole tribal, thing that you alluded to.
But it still lives on in certain areas. Like
no, I'm talking about more U.S. I guess.
Yeah, but I'd say even in U.S.
Really,
there's like underground closed door folks who have like some serious badasses that I know about, but they don't want to be out there. They're not going to be in the public eye, but people will see them, and these folks will sometimes show up at the seminar when a certain old man that they want to meet, or like someone who trained with the old man, and it's like people know them. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but it's like I was going to actually let me jump back to this. You want to talk about more of my experience in the Philippines or the comparison or any particular goal?
Actually, that would be good because I was going to kind of segue into that when you went over there and then kind of get some compare and contrast with you as far as the teaching and what you got out of it. We can do that.
Okay. So as a Phil-Am, there's this, I think for any Filipino artist, like going back to the homeland is an amazing experience. I have no problem saying like, I'm sitting next to my martial arts instructor next to me, and I'm trying not to hold back tears because I'm like in tears when I'm leaving the Philippines. I did not want to leave.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It just hit here. And then like I was blessed by Inocencio Galaga, Lolo Shook, who was like, he passed away recently.
I've never seen that.
He was. I remember I was able to attend one seminar with Edgar Solite, and he said, "What? Shook's your instructor? I'll shook up," because he was out there. He is not your typical person. He still believed and kept in line with a lot of the esoteric spiritual beliefs and practices. So it's like, it was hard for me to recommend Lolo Shook because for anyone coming from overseas, because it's like you had to have the right filters to appreciate what he had to offer, but he knew everybody. I mean, it was like, and like he got into knowledge that no one else really cared to know about, and I chose to stick with him because I knew I'd have an access to get exposure to the cultural aspects on a much deeper level than I could have got with anyone else. Could I have gotten more if I had chose to train with other instructors? Like I met Tony in my first trip in '93. There wasn't the Binondo gym yet, but it was downstairs in the shop of Tommy D. And so I spent an entire day with, Tommy D and Tony Diego.
That must have been incredible.
It was interesting. And here's another pitfall. It's like, we're blind to stuff. We can't see what we can't see when we believe our systems is the best. I actually didn't like this because what was being shown was set patterns. I thought the stuff was too big and open for what I was seeing. But here's the caveat: is like that's my viewpoint at that point back then.
Correct.
I do those movements now, and I'm actually one of my core focuses ingraining Calis Illustrissimo. And there's a different focus. So like there is a lot of overlap of techniques from Serrata and Illustrissimo. But their fight strategy and the application of those techniques are very different. And I would say in different Serrata lineages, it's different. And in different Illustrissimo lineages from different instructors, it's different.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you that. From Brickett Sanction to the Kiro to Burton, I can attest to that. I mean,
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's bad, good, or indifferent,
But it's a trip. It's like, I got to spend an afternoon when I think at the time, others would know better, but it's like 93. Tommy was still fairly new. What I remember, and I could be wrong, but what I remember is I had more experience in FMA than him at that point in time.
Wow.
But it's like everybody knows how badass he is now. And then like jump back to 2002. I stayed on the project for 5 months in the Philippines, and then I was actually training in the Binondo gym. And
So that's upstairs. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
And like, I'm a student of Tony Diego, but really I feel a strong affinity and appreciation of Tommy D, because he was like, really did his best to help me understand and teach me things. And then like, he didn't have to, but like I lived in Quezon City, and he would give me actually a ride halfway home. So it's like, that was, a huge gift.
Yeah, that was
to me
at
that time period.
Yeah, I've heard incredible things about him.
Yeah. And it's like someone posted a photograph. Like I didn't even know there were any photographs of my time there. Me and my brother were training there. But it's like, oh shoot, right next to me is Coach Arnold, and it's like, look how amazing he is now. But it's like, oh, I didn't even really know that.
Oh wow, you got to post those at some point. So you go back. So you're kind of going back and forth. I mean, because you went back to the Philippines '97, correct?
Yeah. So 97, I broke off with my instructor, and it was like I've had teacher burnout at different times, especially when it's like I'm just focusing on one curriculum and you feel like you maxed it out, and you got to expose yourself to other things at a certain point. And in '93, I think I got to meet Tatang, but he was in the hospital for tuberculosis, so I wasn't able to train with him directly. And in '97, like it was already set up that like I was able to train with him, basically 2 months, 6 days a week, practically there in the Luneta. And my main instructors were, Tatang was there, and I got to experience stuff, but actually learning the system was Norman Zuanico, and then Henry Espera. And so, it's one of the controversy things like, there's the early generation who are, they're all connected. In terms of the core group who are around each other, it was like Topper, Mang Romy, Mang Tony, Yuli Romo. Then, Yuli Romo took off at a certain point, Regalang, but you have to, there's different things about the stories there, but there's the people who are the core group. But after a certain point, and the person who was there on the other days is, Mang Henry. And I've talked to other people who were like, he was there for super long time. And he was there. Actually, I was lucky. I had most of the time, it was both Mang Henry and Mang Norman. Mang Norman lived with Tatang for over a decade.
Yeah.
And, they had different perspectives. And then I had a connection with Mang Henry because my first trip in '93, I also trained with Andy Abraham, who was already like injured. I think he had a stroke already by '97. Could be wrong, but I got to spend some time with him, but not a lot of time with him. '97, it was half my time was with Tatang, and then the afternoons I was with Jose Mena studying Doblite Rapalo.
Yeah, but what a freaking man. It's incredible. I tell you, I had Maestro Norman on here. Just wonderful, wonderful guy, man. And I'm going to get him back on, but just what a super kind of grandfather-like type personality. Seems like a great guy. Hope to meet him one day.
Very caring. And I'd say the same for like Mang Henry. And it's like for anyone who can make it out to the Philippines and is actually lucky enough to touch hands with Mang Henry, that old man still has like crazy skill. And then you get to experience the old school flavor. And late last year, I was like going like, house crazy. And, one of his guys like said, hey, let's get together and spar. And I got to spar with like some of his guys who had been with him for 20 years. And just because of how they move, all of a sudden I'm pulling out and sparring using, I'm down low to the ground doing Mang Henry techniques. And then another time around, like I'm pulling out a whole bunch of Doblite Rapalon. And I was like, okay, let's pull this stuff, out of archives and go that. But that's only going to happen when people fight within certain strategies and certain skill sets when they're playing certain games. Otherwise, you're not, this is only going to translate to judo and BJJ people, but they talk about the positional game.
Positional.
And it's like, there's techniques that only happen when you're in someone's guard. There's only stuff that happens up when you're in side control.
It's true.
There's stuff that only happen when you're playing the, the leg game. And it's the exact same thing for FMA. And that's the beauty of training with folks from different systems, is they're going to pull out different things. They're going to have different specialties. And sometimes it's going to be available in sparring, but sometimes the best way is they have isolated games, like their version of counter for counter, which is a big part of like Balantawak or Sarada or Lightning. But in my experience, and like kind of jumping in there, like I've talked to other of my age peers who did what I did. They're from the United States and they went to the Philippines to spend time with Tatang or other old men. And I should also mention there's other people who have done it for, before me, and sometimes a decade plus before me, who've been going back to the Philippines for years. And they're like, have some serious deep knowledge, but they're still on the under, and they have, like I said, video tapes. I know folks in the UK and the United States who fall into those, in Australia, who fall into those categories. But, hopefully those videos and their stories will open up in the future.
Wonderful.
But people got different things. If you didn't ask the right questions, and it's late enough in the game, like this is basically, I got the experiences I got with Tatang because I must have asked the right thing. But basically, I got a master's course in how to make all of my previous knowledge not work.
I think that happened to a lot of people, not just you.
But because I came in with 7 years and 6 years of teaching that stuff and teaching other people how to use it, to get that master's class in that, and then my perspective of Illustrismo was so biased. Like I really didn't even appreciate Tatang's Largo or his Umpogara game, because it's really not Largo. Though he could, because for me, Largo is you can hit the hand, Medios, you can hit the body,
correct.
And Cortos, you can, then you can use a secondary Daga or empty hand. And but Tatang could do Corto and Medio and be out of your measures still.
The whole concept of Umpagada, the way it was explained to me, is that, obviously the 1 inch and all that is kind of almost like hybrid ranges are kind of created incidentally through it. You know what I mean? Largo Medio being one of them, that kind of like maybe, just the elastico just outside, but yet when you're coming back in, you're kind of almost medium. That's the way it's always been on that. Did you find parallel to that?
It's really because you're only going to be in some of those measures. It's like, it's really jumping back. So I'm going to go on a tangent real quick. Pull me back to this question. So hold it for me, because I might get lost in my head. I've watched the evolution and change of FMA in many different ways. While I was into this deep private, like you're going to learn the system, you're going to learn private, you're going to do it the way I want to do it. And then also having the exposure to bespoke training. Like what I got is different from anybody else because they were training me just for me. I got that experience from different, elders, mentors, and then even like, there's younger peers. Like you're mentioning, like, Brandon. I'm like, how many years younger is he than us? But it's like there's probably a wealth of knowledge there, right?
Right.
But a lot of people now are going to be learning, and people actually for years have been learning via seminars. They're no longer learning directly one-on-one, or they're learning in a large classroom, which wasn't part of most FMA for a long time. So that's a modern thing. And I'm not saying anything's are bad. I'm just talking about the difference. And then now we got people who are learning. They might start from videos.
We were talking, yes, in the test run, this is something we're going to cover, the evolution of training and teaching. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was looked down on majorly, and I would never admit to it. But I'm like, hey, I've been an Inosanto video blend student and a Dog Brother video student. I basically got Sorry, Mark Denny, but I did eventually buy your videos, but I originally got your pirated videos in the Philippines.
Oh my God.
In 93. And there was a shop that everybody knows, and I was like, that's where I got my Innocento blend stuff and different, it's like, but you needed to see that stuff to get exposed to those things. And if you actually take the time to train that stuff and have a good training partners and then test it out, you can learn a lot from that.
I totally agree. If you have like-minded training partners, key thing. I totally agree. Totally.
Yeah.
I totally agree on that.
And I'm just going to do a quick shout-out plug for so one system that was like on the under and totally unavailable before was the Compo. My first exposure of getting it on my radar screen was when I met Edgar Salite, and then we're, sitting around talking about the Philippines, and then, he started talking about and showing me the Compo. And then later on, I had some guys show me in person who are, backyard students of Edgar. And it was like this totally overwhelming system. It was just like totally offensive. Yeah. And then in 2002, I got to train with this guy. A lot of the Compo folks were like kind of secretive about it. This guy was actually one of the Manila students of Edgar, but he also trained with like Eric Olavides. And I didn't ask about permission to say his name, so I'm not going to say it.
Okay.
He was my first exposure in being taught it. But then what I was learning was something like, this is laser precision accuracy and laser precision measure. Even though there was nothing in the teaching methodology that taught measure, you were supposed to make this exact contact with the stick, and that's only possible, and you're supposed to rip with the tip of the stick. That's only possible when you're maintaining it. And so, and then like jump forward to like a couple years back, I finally got to spar somebody in Dog Brothers style. And it was like, this guy is like one of my favorite people to hang out with in the Philippines now because of FMA, but it's like, when it's used, it's a beautiful system. But the whole reason I brought it up is the entire curriculum for the different lineages of what's taught is solo practice and offensive. So it's the best distance video learning FMA system, in my opinion. And I've watched people get extremely good doing it. And there's the original system put up by Paulo Pagling from the family and the family.
All that together.
And then also the I can't remember the name. Sorry, Mangtini. Celestino Macachor. His system, and I know people. I can't remember the name right now. I'm just blanking out, but I know people got great value out of those two systems.
Yeah, his system, I hear it's great. Yeah. Yeah.
And like one person who's done some great work with it is like Sonny Sison. Who's one of my good buddies and stuff. And it's like we work on film, and like we had the stuntman there, and he took a whole bunch of guys who never trained in FMA, but they're skilled. They know their bodies, they're stuntmen, they pick up things. And I was like, in 3 hours, man, they look like they've been doing it for years. But it's Sonny's expertise as a teacher, his expertise as a fighter, but it's built on the foundation of everything he learned and got from Mangtini. So he's very clear of like, no, that's Mangtini's curriculum. And this is what, an experienced, skilled fighter, experienced, skilled coach can take someone else's curriculum and deepen it in different ways.
Oh, yeah. Like it sounds like he's done. Just going back to your time with Edgar. So did you get to move around with them, train with them, talk? I know you got to talk.
So I went to the seminar. It was like I was coming back from visiting family in Southern California. Showed up and working out. And then, said, Edgar, I just wanted to introduce myself in 93, because this was before my 97 trip. 93 is like I went to the Philippines, and this is who I trained with. And then we, then that opens the door, and then we're just talking about who we know and the experiences.
Yeah. No,
and, the different old men. And so it's just like, it was a wonderful day of being able to get to it. That's my only exposure to Edgar. but then like years later, like when I was involved, I was the executive. So Darren DeBona, I think, was the president, and then I was the executive director of the US FMA. If it was a nonprofit, we were throwing national tournaments. We were throwing the first tournaments out of, I can't remember the name of it, but it was this Disney World Martial Arts Festival and stuff done out of Disney World. And it was like we were the first FMA tournaments being broadcast on ESPN. So that's like part of the claim to fame.
Oh, wow.
And then I was teaching we were teaching workshops in different parts of the United States. So first day was how to train as an athlete, and then train as a coach for the sport rules. And the day 2 was how do you train to be a judge, referee, and then in terms of the other roles that were needed. And it was all hands on. And out of that experience, I got to meet and experience stuff with other folks. And one of the folks that I met at that time and became friends with already was Roger Agbalos. Like, so it's like I've got some exposure to Lamenco folks, there. And then also the folks that I know over here in the Philippines who were like, Edgar's students before he left for the U.S.
Before he left. Right. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that system. The fusion of the Campo and Illustrissimo and all that. I just think it's a great system. Yeah, and Roger does. I'm a fan of Roger's as well. So when, as far as the kind of the difference, because before you actually officially moved over there, as far as the teaching and the cultural, in other words, it seems like the Westerns like to stress their students, and this is kind of a question from Dragon and me kind of fused together. It seems like the Western teachers kind of put the cultural in there as far as a learning aspect in addition to obviously the physical content and what have you. Is that the same in the Philippines, or is that not emphasized as much, the cultural aspect when you're learning a system?
It's always going to be specific to the instructor and specific to the system.
Okay.
So you can't go general.
So it might not be where they might be giving you, like in the Western, let's say, for example, where you get maybe kind of a well-rounded, whether it's true or not, that's a whole different story, but you might get a well-rounded as far as, a generic sense of history as far as the Philippines, evolution, FMA, coming over here and all that. But where you're saying in the Philippines, it's more specific and context to what they're teaching you and the area perhaps they live in and geographic.
Yeah, because some of them didn't care about the history. They didn't know the history. Yeah. And some of them, like I've been lucky enough and privileged to have been studying with Romy Macpagal for the last 4 years. And I'd say a lot of my time with him is all just talking history because we have that mutual passion and talking the blades because that's our passion, And then what do you call it? But there's also the physical training, and there's also physical training with the folks here in Manila who, train with him. So, but, other folks, it was like, look, this is how you use it for the jeepney. This is how you use it, on the banca. This is how you use it, this is how you stay aware when you're walking the streets of, Quiapo or, wherever they were from. And then if you had the wherewithal to ask the questions, which I already had by 97, strong focus on the history, then I'm asking questions about, okay, what was it like for you back then?
Right.
Like 97, I was able to meet an old man who hadn't picked up a stick in 50 years. His entire family didn't even know. But there was a guy who was a tricycle driver who became friends with a modern practitioner and told them, hey, the real master of our area who used to fight in the fiesta fights died, but the second best is still alive. And we took a trip all the way out to Cavite, rented a jeepney for the day and went to go see this old man. And originally he was like, hindi kaya. It's like, it's not possible. I'm too old. I haven't picked up a stick in 50 years. And like their family was like, who are these Americans coming to visit?
Yeah, right. To go. Yeah.
But I was there. I came all the way. So I said, sir, can I just demonstrate what I know? And then like the old man was watching, and then at a certain point, he goes, and basically said, that's in Tagalog. I didn't really understand it back then. But he goes, that's nice, but that wouldn't work. This is what I do. And it was like, Yoda shit. There's old Yoda. And then it was like, boom. And this is a guy who lived in Cavite, on the ridge in Tagaytay. He's been there. His family's been there for, I don't know, but it's like they were already in the same house for over 50 years at that point. And had fought the circuit. So he had fought in fiesta matches in Cavite, in Batangas, and in Laguna, and in Rizal.
Wow.
So it's like, at that time people always talk about, Cebuano style. It's like, no, when you talk, and then later on meeting other people who are Luzon specialists and can tell you the deeper histories of those areas and when stuff disappeared. And some of that stuff actually still existed up into the 90s. Like you could still find people who go, yeah, let's play. And it's like a pickup basketball game. But, you're going to spar under their rules. And you better know the cultural paradigm of fighting. Because if you go outside of it, then it's a real fight. So you might be allowed to break their hand, but if you touch their face, it's on.
Yeah.
Oh, you go into clinch range, it's on. You punch or kick, it's on. And in some areas, that's all allowed. So it's going to be different in different areas.
Okay.
So why does the system do this? Why is it all medial range drills? It's just because that's how they fought in that area, and that's what they saw as manly.
And that's what their guidelines were. Interesting. Okay.
So prior to the weak half armor in Cebu City and the number system is like, you better be able to test really high, and be at that range and control your hits just so they sting, but you don't break anything.
Right. Gotcha. Right.
And that's because
the gear.
It's like capoeira. People are like, I've met capoeirista who can fight with that stuff. You can see it like, who've knocked people out with those kicks and those skills. But the actual practice of capoeira in the Horda is both performance, participatory, dance. And in some areas, the FMA practices fall under all those different areas. And then there's certain practices like, no, Huego Toro was an actual duel, And there's people, age peers, who've actually alive now who have actually fought in Huego Toro fights. People call them death matches now.
Yeah.
But I'm like, name one person who's actually died.
No, and got broke, and it. Yeah.
And there are like validated stories of people do it, and that's like why De Campo is such a respected system within the Philippines, because people actually know who, Caballero fought when he fought them, and those systems that in time have disappeared, but at least those memories and knowing like, no, those are validated matches. We know who he fought. Yeah. We know who this person fought.
And like that guy broke. Yeah. Wow. Great stuff. So from your perspective though, and all that, like what's your lens, regarding your students and all that, as far as training, like, you've seen the evolution of training, obviously there, here, and just decades of evolution. What do you incorporate for yourself and your students and seeing thus as a result of the evolution,
It's going to go through different phases. So, are you a beginning student? Are you intermediate student? Are you advanced? And then what does that mean in terms of being a competitor?
Okay.
I have to put together a video, but it's like, I have some video footage of like, it's like, depending on the viewer, it's like, it looks like I'm abusing that person. Right. But it is like, they got other footage where it's like, they're just doing this and this and that. But it's like, but what people don't realize is I'm sparring with someone who's a former national champion in that footage. So their skill set and timing, their skill set, it's going to bring out an entirely different game and what's possible.
Dynamic. Yeah.
And then also it's like, when I get together people, it's like, okay, what rules are we going to play? Are we going to take it to the ground? And I've realized now especially at this point in the Philippines, I have to ask, if they want to actually take it to the ground, if they want throws, I need to ask what their background is. Because I've paid the price of not realizing, oh, the other guy is actually, an amateur mixed martial artist with, a purple belt. I'm like
BJJ or something,
And it's like, and I'm like, well, then I shouldn't have held back on my throws. But I've seen people go to the ER because they got thrown on cement. They didn't know how to land.
You can't train for God knows how long, man.
So actually, you ask things that are on multiple levels. I'm going to go to some questions that were asked, and I'm going to ask them. So I'm just looking at it. So the first one was training tips, sparring tips. So I guess the first thing I'll say about that is...
What was this? Did I miss this? Oh my gosh.
No, they sent it to me personally. It was Richard Packman.
Okay. Oh, good. I was going to say. Okay.
There's before sparring, during sparring, and after sparring. There's a perspective of the coach, teacher, and then there's the student. But prior to sparring, it's like, is this just... So there's... In judo, there's randori, which is in the gym, and you're training with your classmates. And there's different ways to do randori. There's just like, I want to play hard today. I just want to isolate. I'm only going to work this certain body of techniques. And so a screamer that could be like, today I just want to try to work corto. I just want to work medio. I just want to work this. And when you're thinking like that, then you can do things like, if I just want to work medio, well, maybe I'll do 1 minute rounds. And then say, hey, in that 1 minute, let's try to get 5, what do you call it? Melees, or it's 5 exchanges.
Okay.
Because otherwise you'll see sparring footage and people are running around outside of even stick contact range for 2 minutes.
Yeah, no range. Right.
Yeah, which has value. I've spent a lot of time focusing on, I think Crafty used to call that outside snake or something like that, and then stick squared where the sticks actually connect. There's a lot of value in training in that. And my influence from that came from Sunny Umpad in Corto Cadena. I think in terms of footwork and then jumping between ranges, there's a lot of great distinctions using his training methodology to learn and apply that stuff, which I used to not believe. I jumping on that. I became friends with Sunny Umpad in around 94 when I was allowed to go to his house, his apartment. We had a visitor coming in, and I used to drive him to Sunny's lessons, and me and Sunny started talking. And because Sunny did stuff with blades that I'd never seen outside of the Philippines, we became friends. But he was also in the experimental transition. And he was doing a lot of stuff in his exploration that I thought, it's not safe. It's not validly sound. But you need to go to unsafe things sometimes when you're exploring things. You're seeing how far you can push the edge and see things.
Okay.
But he had a very creative training methodology, but I thought it was too much play, too much dance, until I had a student who attended a seminar that Sunny taught, and she came back after 6 months, and she was sparring with guys, and I was watching her totally dominate some of these other guys. And here's the thing, she wasn't a fighter. She was just inside of play. She didn't hit hard, but her ringmanship of using footwork to box them in and then to flank was so high, and it was all unconscious. I'm like, what the hell is Sunny teaching these people? Yeah, I need to go back and look at it and explore. And that's the only reason. Then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go back. Formally became a student. And then, and I don't know if it's actually even before that, Mario Quiroz, who posted on FMA discussion, he was actually
here. Yeah.
He's one of my kuyas in that system. And he taught out of my class. Just I'm teaching on the Berkeley campus. Right next to me is Mario, and he's having a third to the half of the class. After 97, I almost always, at a certain point, always had an instructor of another system. So multiple things are going on in the same space. And some people were students of them. They're my students. But we would do exchanges and sharing information. We had Balintawak, 12 Pares. One of my classes, we had a Pikiti Tertia instructor, but I never asked him why, and he doesn't want to be named, but it's he didn't teach us any Pikiti. He taught us Krabi. So we all learned Krabi from that person. which Krabby is a great way to learn how to fight with double stick.
Okay.
Shout out to like Dog Brother Martial Arts. The way they break down Krabby, it makes it totally accessible. It'll make you a better double stick fighter. And then it's about you going back to your original system and seeing how to use it. And like my focus today is really learning how to use it with blades, which brings out whole different distinctions when you train with steel, and then also applying a lot of the core concepts that I've gotten from Mang Romy Makabagal. So that's fun and interesting, but it's like finding the right people to train and pressure test with steel is a whole different challenge, especially when people don't have safety equipment. That's it's dangerous stuff.
Yeah, steel, right. And you're not forearm guards and a whole 9 yards. I mean, yeah, wow. Let's make sure we get all right. So when so let's get the whole okay. So film.
I just want to jump back to his questions. I'm looking at, and I'm just going to go through them real quick.
Sure.
We're talking about sparring. What are ways to elevate one's game aside from sparring with different people? Okay, so my general practice is when I look at a sparring thing, I want to know, like, limit it to 3 things. A lot of times just one thing, because you don't, as a new person, you don't have the bandwidth to hold multiple things at the same time. What I mean by multiple things, I just want to stay at medio range, okay? I want to focus on flanking. I want to focus on, instead of meeting force to force, I want to go with the force or, step out and then, accelerate the force. That's already like 5 different things. You're not going to be able to do all those things when you first start. And you have to figure it out. And, this next question, how do you make adjustments in the middle of engagement? One thing is, like I said, you have your objectives for your match. You need to see how long you can actually keep that objective in your training at the same time throughout your sparring engagement. There's something called the pain scale where, like, a doctor will ask you, like, right now, I'm probably not going to be able to spar for, I'm seeing, okay. Anyway, my point I'm touching, I've displaced my AC joint.
Yeah.
Like, I did a cutting video recently, and when you don't see the video, it's like after I do this and I cut it, I walk around like, oh, fuck. It's it hurts for like 2 days. It still actually hurts from just that one cut. So it's like, I shouldn't, I probably won't be able to spar with this for at least another 3 months. But I went on a tangent. I got lost. But my point, what I was bringing back, the pain scale, is that they talk about from a scale of 1 to 10, how intense is the pain. So, from, on a scale of 1 to 10, when I'm, like, you've heard some of your other guys talk about, like, some folks focused on, like, the intensity of sparring. And there's value of pushing people to the edge of overwhelm. Because I will actually have people like, okay, on a scale of 10 being 10, I'm totally overwhelmed. And actually 10 would be like, no, you're ready in fight or flight.
Yeah.
Like, the person isn't there. And you've gotten there because you've seen matches where the other person runs away or the other person lost it. Like, I've had students like, interesting, his kie sounds like he's screaming die. And then you're like, oh shit, he's yelling die, 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 right? Because they went all the way to the edge of fight. And, and you should not go to freeze unless you're trained. So part of my training is in different modalities of fight or flight, stress management, handling PTSD. Like, part of my training is with the Strozzi Institute. I don't know if you ever heard of Richard Strozzi, but he's the guy who taught Aikido and different holistic practices to an Army Special Forces group. So he does an entire thing around somatic healing, which is mind-body healing.
Okay.
And so using a scale of 1 to 10, you can use it for focus. Were you able to keep your intention the entire time? Another time is like during the match. Am I able to keep my flight or fight your anxiety below a 6. Which you need to be able to do if you're going to be pulling out the high level refined skills. People focus on self-defense. It was really popular at one point in time. Was like, no, you need to be training gross motor movements. And I'm like, all the high level people I know that I've experienced, no, they're using a combination of refined, integrated gross motor skill plus refined skills.
Interesting.
When Mitch Palacio could just literally go like this and just go like this like this with his foot, and instantly my entire body goes above his hand, and his hand is like this. So a 5'10" guy, I'm 5'6", and my entire body is now over 5 feet 8 inches in the air, and it looked like he just went like, chook.
Yeah,
right.
That's crazy.
And Tatang did it. Darren Tabone's top guys did it. I know other people don't want to be named, have those kind of skills. No, it's like, so part of my focus is like, no, how do you train and ingrain being able to expand your bandwidth of relaxation and high level skills? And what people talk about is flow state.
So you don't get overwhelmed and so you can handle the bandwidth. Okay.
Yeah, and part of my research is into flow state and accessing different ways of getting into flow state. And I think it's called The Rise of Superman. It's like one of the accessible books that talks about it and has some of the practices. But it's like, the research now, people are like, every time a gold medal is won, these people are probably in flow states. You'd probably even see it in things like every time someone wins, like America's Got Talent, or their initial things there. Or the extreme level is extreme sports, where like if people are not in flow states, accessing these deeper skills, they will literally die and fall off the rock face, die during that ramp trick, die doing that jump off the thing or that wave. So, and it's like, if people are doing those crazy skills on a wave, well, they will literally be ground into coral and die. Why couldn't like someone like Tatang just like, okay, totally allow the blade to miss him by 1 inch and then chop off the other guy's head?
Right, get to the
like Tatang, talking about validated stuff. There's people who've actually validated 7 of his instances, and then there's all the other stories. So it's like, different lineages look at, okay, what is it validated? What's the context of their challenge matches?
Yeah. Wow.
Going back to man, it's already 90 minutes, and it's like we haven't even got into stuff. We haven't got into weapons.
We might have to do a part 2. We could do that.
What do you want to talk about now, or should we call it? Or
we can because you have more. Did you receive more questions?
Well, it's hard. I've been there because there's stuff there's like questions about some of the folks I studied around the experience. What was different with Tatang or this person? We could
do a part 2 because we haven't gone in deep into the blades, your passion there, and we haven't definitely got into any of the filming. So we could definitely do. I mean, there would be enough for a part 2, I guess, in simpler, put in simple terms. What do you think?
Well, yeah, we could definitely do. I mean, I enjoy talking to you, and I enjoy getting this information out there. And then, I'm down to talk for another half hour, but then no one's going to watch this shit if it's too long. But
that's the thing we're finding. If it goes beyond it, like I was tracking kind of like that, if it kind of goes beyond a half, it kind of like, because people are like, no, man, I bet it's good, but I can't stay here for 2 hours. Yeah.
Like there's stuff I'm talking about that is of great interest to some people. And then I'll speak for like 20 minutes on something they absolutely have no interest in.
Yeah.
That's why it's good when there's like time codes and stuff. But people are just like get to eavesdrop on us talk about stuff. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about right now, or experiences, or since I'm you're the human here?
No, we could do a part because I definitely the blades, your filming stuff, kind of some other stuff when you go back. I definitely have enough for a part 2. Easy, and whatever you had.
can we go to? Do you mind going to blades? Because I think we can cover some stuff right now in the next.
You want to do a little on blades? Let's do a little.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So I'm just gonna grab some blades and bring them over here.
Sure. Bringing out the blades.
Okay.
Ooh.
So
what do you got there?
I can't remember who made this, but this.
Claymore? Is it?
No, it's actually a longsword.
Longsword. Okay. Okay.
You know, this can be used with one hand. This can be used with two hands. And this was the primary, you know, it's like the most popular training weapon in HEMA. And, you know, who doesn't want to play King Arthur or, you know, Lord of the Rings and that kind of stuff and be a geek? This is a historical replica. Okay. When we're talking about historical replicas in the HEMA community, they know, okay, for something like this, because it's an earlier time period, there wasn't mass production. Each one was made by an individual. To be an actual historical replica, they'll tell you, this is the blade it's modeled on. It's found in this museum. It's explicit. There is, trying to remember the word, but basically it's very clear if it's not bullshit, because there's fantasy blades. They're like, okay, this was modeled on that blade. And they're going to also be able, and they get nitty gritty. Is the weight the same? Is the balance, point of balance, you know, is it, you know, like, look how close, this is the point of balance right there.
Right.
Is it the same as the historical model? You know, and it changes up because historical model, you know, does it have, in HEMA, they usually don't, but does it have the same flex as the historical model?
Okay.
So people say, oh, this is historically accurate. I'm like, bullshit, it isn't. Depending on your standards. But I'm using the standards from the HEMA community. And so for people who don't know, my other, you know, I'm into swordsmanship. My focus has been for the last decade, both Filipino and HEMA. Okay. And I like a lot of distinctions. And I also appreciated the fact that in HEMA, it's like, you know, I started getting that stuff in 98. That people were learning from books.
Yeah.
And, you know, and this was a community where people are respected people who can't fight. They're total nerds. And then there were some people who were like, shit, that dude's a fucking badass. And it's like, and the level of quality of the training is all important. And then, like, I don't have one myself, but then there's, like, you know, HEMA sabers. And where is? So there's polycarbs. Like, here's another historical accurate sword that actually has the right weight, has a steel, so you got a cross guard to do it. But this is nylon.
Oh.
One of the tricks that we found is you can actually glue foam so that you actually get the bind, or sandpaper, except, man, you know, jack people have hit them with sandpaper. But now you can get some of the experience of the bind there. But then if you want to go cheap Philippines, this is, you know, 1.5 inch rattan. And let me push this back here.
Is it colors? Okay.
You know,
Saber?
This piece of rattan is, I remember, it's close to 700 grams. So this is like more of a heavyweight saber. But then, like, you know, I can replicate it. I think, though this thing has like, look, I can't even flex this thing.
No flex. Yeah, no flex. Yeah.
This jacks people up when they get stabbed.
I can't even imagine.
Hold on. I'm going to ask. Oh, here it is. When we get into Filipino blades, this is not a Filipino blade. This is a machete.
I was going to say your basic. Yeah, okay.
But this is the safe way to go and the cheap way to go when you're training, initially starting with steel. But the moment you go from this to this, so this is a Pinuti. This is modern made. This is made by traditional Pandays. and traditional smiths. And, you know, if I did this with an antique, it would be blasphemy. But, you know, I ground down and you know, dulled this. But the edge of geometry is still cutting geometry. Like I can go up to, like I can cut, you know, papaya trees and mango tree, not mango trees. And, well, actually, I could actually cut mango trees because it's a softwood. I can still cut things with this. And at the right speed, I can still cut flesh with this because it still has the edge geometry, the chisel grind of it, even though I have that's at least a millimeter to 2 millimeter thick edge. But try to do techniques with this is going to feel like it puts the fear of God totally different from this into people. And then, look, I'm holding these both up. Look at the difference in this is straight, and then you can see the forward curve, which is standard on most Philippine blades. There are exceptions, but most of them have like, okay, here's the, you know, you can see the drop off there.
Okay, yeah. Interesting.
Now,
hey, Nino said hi. I know this.
Yeah. Nino, I guess you want to. Nino and I go back. We're deeply connected through like family, and then like, you know, he was in my classes when he was still a kid, and then like you guys like 20 plus years. But it's like if you've been in the game long enough, you're gonna watch people who are gonna surpass you in different areas. And his knowledge of street, empty hand punching, empty hand fighting, and knife is extraordinary.
I got him in early July.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
And he's very much focused with some of his peers, you know, self-defense in the modern era. So, you know, you're going to actually get some good points and different perspective from him. And it's like real sharp dude.
Yeah. Looking forward to him.
I have sword mentors. Okay. And what do you have to be to someone that I'd actually call a sword mentor? So I grew up in a household with bolos that were brought back from the Philippines in the 70s. You know, my dad brought them back with the peso coins that were chopped in half. And I actually, you know, when my dad wasn't looking, we had pesos in the house, and I would actually test them out of like chopping pesos in half with them, chopping, you know, the really thick nails in half, because those were the old testing things. And I'm also like my grandfather was a gardener, my mother was a gardener. I mean, gardening's been a part of my life, so it's like I've used bolos in a practical sense.
As far as the gardening, okay.
Yeah. And then I was also into survival from the Boy Scouts. Like I taught survival merit badge and nature merit badge in the Boy Scouts at summer camp. But they have something called fire and shit in the Boy Scouts. And you have to show your knowledge and demonstrate your skill in starting a fire, your skills with a knife. And then there's an advanced level where then it's also your skills with an axe.
Okay.
And, you know, splitting wood, doing certain types of cuts, and showing notches in logs and stuff, and to show that you could do campcraft. The manual was about so many pages. I used to have a copy of it in the 90s. But in the Philippine Boy Scouts, they had something similar, but it was with the bolo. My dad brought it back for me, and I taught myself all the skills there and how to do all the skills except for the ones that were specific to bamboo, because where are you going to get the right type of bamboo without paying an arm and leg for it in San Francisco growing up?
Yeah, in San Francisco. Hey,
but there's a lot of practical skill, functional skill with bolos that just come from using them every day. That you're not going to know unless you use it. Like people talk about, you need to go 100%. Yes, for certain things. But if you go 100% with the bolo and a certain type of cut into wood, what you're going to get? You're going to get a stuck bolo. You do that with a bolo in terms of edge-to-edge contact, you're going to get a stuck, you know, you're going to get two bolos that are like.
Yeah, they're kind of right.
Hold on. Let me grab another
Sure.
blade show you real quick.
We got a question here. Any preference for fill blade type? Ganunting versus Braun in that day or couple on? What do you got there?
So this is what do you call it? And it's damaged. This is supposed to have the nose. This is the deity.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So this is. I won't go into the names right, but this is an Ilongo blade. So Ilongo, systems that are Ilongo, Akiti Tertia, Lightning. Trying to think of Wado. There's a number of other systems there. You know, most people when they see Ebola are like thinking heavy and like, you know, thick spine and stuff. And I just don't want to. I just don't like touching the blades. It's just a habit and stuff. But
oh, look at the flex. Yeah. Huh?
yeah, these are super light and flexy, and this is a type of blade that I'm like, when you see someone demonstrating stuff, they're like, oh, we're from this region. I'm like, oh yeah, how come you're not using your blade and stuff? And you see the techniques, and then they describe it particularly. It's like, this is an example of an indigenous blade that, depending on the other blade or even of the same type, these can go in, like you could get two blades that are like, you know, 5 millimeters, half centimeter in on each side. So it's like a quarter inch and it's going to stick.
So, yeah.
And you get like a nasty bind. Yeah. So there's a lot of my focus in terms of the physical side is doing like, you know, Robert Parks, he's an instructor out of Australia. He's also a history professor, but has an area that he's written about called kinetic archaeology. So it's basically what are the systematic approaches to looking into the actual history of an art, going into the material culture, but then also going into, you know, the physical movements of an art. Now, that's something I was doing totally on my own. I've been doing it for years. I have, like, when I mentioned my indigenous Filipino sword mentors, I'm going to jump around, but like they've been doing kinetic archaeology for decades. Right. So I've been to people's houses. When you go into their houses, these are what the real experts have. They're going to have 100+ blades out available. And they'll have like 2, 3, 4 times that hidden or in boxes. There's one guy who's he's a secret expert in the United States. You've had different guests talk about him. Sometimes they call him a secret squirrel. And like his collection and his knowledge runs way, 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 way deep. And there's other guys in different parts of the United States. And when it comes to the antiques, the knowledge of the antiques in terms of how they handle and perform is in the United States. Why? Because all the blades left most of those blades have left the Philippines. And the quality antiques that I've seen in the Philippines, 100% of them are repatriated.
So the antiques are here in America.
Someone in the Philippines was able to bring those blades back on a rare case from Spain, but all the rest from the United States.
From the United States. Interesting. Hi. Wow, it's a majority of here. Oh, I do got a question here. Elrik, any preference for Philippine blade type, Ganunting versus Barong versus Panete or Capellan? But
and it's like, James, it depends on how you want to use it and fight with it. Because when you take a barong, and here's like something I want to bring out. In talking to people who have actually, like I mentioned, my elders, people have been doing the field research for decades, in some cases decades before me, you do not do blade on blade, edge on edge contact with Philippine blades. And I'd say one of the people who told me that was Tata.
Yeah.
And then you talk to some of the elders, it's like, no, some of those techniques, the way they're done, it's like, it's not supposed to be done like that. But some of those techniques were there in the Philippines. Tatang had it and knew it. But I'm of the hypothesis that's stuff that came late 19th century. That was all influenced from two sources. One source is Spanish saber work, which was taught to Filipino troops. And the other part is because a lot of FMA systems evolved into stick systems.
Yes. Okay.
If you go back to the Spanish, colonial period, what was the main weapon? What were people going to battle? Hundreds of Filipinos under the Spanish, documented in different time periods, shield and spear.
Or spear, okay. Oh, okay.
But once you go to the late 19th century, then you actually see constabulario reports. That's on my brains, but different reports of bandits who are using heavy bolos, and then also basically like descriptions. I'm like, holy shit, I know it's gonna be this graphic, but people with their heads smashed in, and it's clear that the weapon was a heavy hardwood stick. So it's like stick fighting is also, that's not like a totally modern evolution. Fighting with the heavy sticks goes back. So the way this light Ilongo blade will perform is going to be entirely different than a barong. Or like, here's an example of, this is a modern made bangkong. And it's like, people say that like, thought like certain things are dead, and there are dead blade types. But look at the craftsmanship.
Yeah.
And this is made by, you can find folks making quality like this in a number of different regions. We're still making it in the old way. So jumping back to like a traditional blade is, there are extant systems. I mean, not systems, but there are living traditions who are still making the blades in the same way. And there's certain blade types that were rediscovered. They do what they call blind builds, where they ask them, hey, what do you remember that no one's asking for anymore? And then usually it's the fighting blades, because they're not making them for fighting anymore. Right. And then a couple of those have been found and people are finding it. But these guys got to make a living. So then they're also doing like, this is a bangkong, but this is probably like a 31-inch weapon. And it's like, it weighs a ton. This is like a Mack truck. It takes something to get started, but once it's gone, it's cutting through.
Yeah, just a weight. Okay.
Through something. But if it's to be, you're going to have to talk to people to find out if it's an actual extant lineage. And then when people are actually making modern blades, then it's like, because people say different things and people debate about it, but it's like, really the simple answer is, where is the actual model that blade is based on? Okay. And when I'm talking about like my sword mentors who have that many blades, some of them have actually also done the field research in the Philippines and then talk to elders and tell you like, oh yeah, this, and they get to the point like where they can see little things on the blade and then have it validated by other people. It's like, oh yeah, that's from this town. That's from this time period. Like those who know can tell you, okay, what time period this is actually from. They'll look at this and know that this is a modern one. They'll also know that this is not traditional. Why? Right away, and I'll give this one, it's pinned. Visayas blades aren't pinned. If it's not pinned, I mean, how many people have actually experienced the blade coming out of the handle? Doing all the tasks that I've done and doing it, it's them. But like the serious people who know the blades, they've done some gnarly tests. Filipino blades, you can't do some of the stuff that people assume you can do in terms of blocking and countering. It's like some of the regional blades were never designed for that.
The whole up to
people say, oh, this is an old art that goes back to like, because sometimes you say stuff it'll like name people, but they'll say like, oh, it's from this lineage of people, and then you go back and see the actual, how many people actually handled the antiques that were used by those people, and then go like, you can't do that with those blades. They don't handle like that.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Wow. So will you how many more? So I'm just can you talk for part 2? Can you talk more on the blades?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think we've, whoever, thank you people who are listening to this, but it's like, ask questions and we'll try to fit it in and I'll try to organize it. And I had like I gone through like pictures of my film work. Like, you know, I'll throw this. Maybe this is like a plug for the next one. Could talk about my experience with Star Wars and being a Jedi and the other Filipino folks who are in that. Talk about my work on Buy Bust. And then, like, I'm working on the first, right now, I'm a stunt coordinator for the first HBO series being filmed in the Philippines right now. So there's a number of different things. And I had all these sparring videos. And then, like, I actually have, like, some of the sparring gear and talk about, like, oh, it's the different ways I use gear and different folks.
Let's do that. Okay, so I'm writing this down for part 2. The sparring vids, your thing on sparring gear, and then a little more on the blades, and then we can go into the film. That'd be good. That'd be good for a part 2.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Your sparring vids, gear, more on the blades, and then jumping into your film. Yeah. No, let's do it. Do it. Yeah. Yeah. We got Tim who wants to hear more. Yeah. All right. So, all right, that'll be great. Let's. I'm gonna have to schedule a part 2 with you, which will be a good problem. Okay.
Yeah.
But again, you know, always a pleasure talking to you. I always enjoy it.
Let me ask you a question real quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
What are you coming up against any walls or challenges in your Illustrissimo journey, or is it just like, it might be because you got access to so many great people, you just might be like Sponge Boy, you know, which is a great place to be in.
You know, it's you know, sometimes did I, take too much on and all that, and did I open up too many doors? And what I mean by that in more detail is, I started with Burton, but then I was always curious about, Brandon. But then I had the lens through David Gould through Mako, and then, Vico has a great deal of the Tony Diego lineage, but also tremendously more so on the Ricketts, being a student under, GM Ricketts. So while the burden is like, okay, I have this, they do this, and all that, but it's also at the same time, though, really helpful in their interpretations and all that, because even though they're a little different, there is an underlying similarity and all that. So, and I think with the more maturity, obviously having now and a better lens and seeing that too, I'm sure has been helpful. If this was 20 years ago, I probably would have been absolutely lost, confused, overwhelmed, and all that. So I actually embracing it because I think it's going to give me a better understanding. And then Yuli's a whole different, you know what I mean? Who I would love to, but I don't want to throw another pan on the stove and not just be able to see through it and all that. But the challenges have been COVID. COVID threw definitely, like everybody else, are wrenching it because I was having training partners regularly. And it was helping with the feeding, of sparring and all that. That's probably been the biggest challenge. So hence jumping on a plane to go see Vico to make up for those deficits, But you do what you got to do. You know what I mean? Like I'm planning to go see him hopefully in June because I want to get that interaction. Even though things have opened up here as far as COVID, I'm starting to get training partners again. So that's been good. But there was that time when it was tough. You know what I mean?
The training partner thing is hard. I mean, it's like, if I train with this person, can I train with that person? Because then I've expanded. You're always worried about, like, what do I get codes from this person I give to that person? That would suck. No,
that's the thing, too. So, right. And the thing also is, like we talked about, man, training partners, they're not a dime a dozen. If you got good ones, not a dime a dozen.
Good developing relationships and screening and finding instructors and training partners is like, especially during this age of COVID, I mean, like that's one of the most important tasks and skills that people need to focus on.
Yeah. So
it's finding people who are willing to go there with you.
And there was a guy I was meeting during the whole COVID thing, and it was risky, but we both agreed. I mean, it wasn't extremely frequent, but we were doing it. But it was nerve-wracking because He's lives in another part of the state, so I didn't necessarily know who his interaction was. He certainly didn't know mine. So, but we were just like, well, let's just do it. I mean, let's just, but again, it wasn't, I'm not saying it was every week, but, maybe once a month. But pre-COVID, I was getting somebody a couple times every week. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
But we're coming out of it. I mean, we're like in Connecticut.
That's good. It's great news.
Yeah, 100%. Because I mean, because now I'm so I want to finish, but at the same time, not necessarily rush. But yeah, that's So, and we got James looking forward to part 2. All right, James Lynn. All right. Yeah, part 2 is gonna be coming. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'm gonna download this, and I'll of course tag you, put it on your wall, and all that. Cool. But this is gonna be good. Your first 2, man, they're over 1,000 views. Matter of fact, folks that are watching, or that will be watching. So, episode 66. If you didn't hear in the beginning of Elrik's there's a part 1 and part 2, and right now he is the 3rd most. Let me go back here. Let me get to home. Okay. Sorry, not 3rd. 2nd most views. 1,200 views. I'm looking at
and I just say it's not really about me. It's because of the content. Yeah. It's just like, and then those will continue to grow because people want to know that information. And I say it's like, people made the mistake of like Elrik says like, Elrik's been wrong, and I'll still be wrong. And some of the stuff on there, I'll change my opinion about it later when I get new data that proves it wrong.
Yeah, which people
because
do.
Some I said, if people pay attention, I'm like, that's a hypothesis. That's not the truth.
That's something around that. So 23 likes, 1,200 views, and Elrik was sporting a beard then. So, point of interest. Then, the 5th most viewed at close to 900 views is the part 2, which is the Spanish colonial time, which is 14 likes and almost 900 views, and still sporting the beard. So, folks, episode 66, part 1, part 2. I highly recommend watching that. Okay, and obviously people are liking it because it's in the top 5, and all that. So good stuff. So yes, part 2 will definitely we'll be having you back, finish up this stuff. So this is what I got for part 2 for you when you come back. We got sparring vids, sparring gear, and your opinion on what you advocate or what have you. Blades, we'll finish up on the blades and whatever more show and tell you have, and we'll go into the film.
Have a good night, Dean.
That sounds good. All right. I appreciate you coming on. It's always enjoyable. Always enjoyable.
Looking forward to the day we get to finally connect in person.
Oh my God, that would be. I know. That's one thing about these interviews, man. I meet so many people that, of course, you don't realize that when you start doing these. You don't think about the things that come with it, the side dishes. And one of the side dishes being like, there's a tremendous amount of people I would love to meet, and obviously you being one of them, of course.
One last thing I say to people is like, most of us who are coming on this show, it's like, I think one of the things that separates the FMA discussion videos from like other stuff there, FMA Pulse or stuff that Paul Rubio is doing, is like the people who are watching your videos are going to sit through this are, actual practitioners.
Yeah.
Like long-term practitioners. Yeah. It's not the spring chicken doesn't want what I'm saying. What a lot of us are saying are not a value.
No, to a newbie. Yeah, I got you. Right. Yeah.
For those of us who care, we want to listen to some of the other guys' stories because it's like, I always heard about this. Let's listen to what this guy says, what that guy said. Yeah.
No, I totally.
So my point is, a lot of us are nice people. Write to us, and then you can if you want to get more information, going to connect. There's a lot of history and culture that people want to share.
Yeah. 100%. All right, so I'm going to post this and download it. But again, always a pleasure, and we'll be in touch. And I'll throw some dates at you for part 2.
Take care, Dean.
All right, you too. All right. long one, but hey, we're gonna do a part 2. So, but I'll download this. But yeah, good stuff. Always enjoyable to have Elrik on. Elrik, definitely one of my favorite guys. More reasons than one, you know, guys kind of advocated for me, and you know, from a few things behind the scenes, I should say. And Elrik's always chosen to take my back, so really appreciate him. But yeah, part 2. I've come up with a date for that. Who is up next? It's a good question because I possibly Ron Saturno, but we haven't got that solidified yet. So I don't want to jump the gun and say that's coming up. But yeah. And then I definitely know Sunday makeup with Guru Danny Terrell, who had to cancel. He had a personal from last Sunday. So he's definitely going to be this Sunday. But between then, it could be 1 or 2. And just got to find that out. So at any rate, but I'll definitely will post that after the discussion. Again, I want to thank you for those who watched. Listen, if you have not already, hit the like button here and subscribe to FMA Discussion, where you can see this interview and other great ones. All right, all. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.